I can tell you the suspect in this case, Shamar Elkins, has been identified. He is the father of 7 of the children that were killed in this house. There is an 8th child that was also killed, as well as the 2 females that were involved. Both of them had gunshot wounds. One of them is still in life-threatening condition. The other is in serious condition, but is expected to recover. There was also an additional female and an additional 13-year-old juvenile that fled from this house and actually jumped off the roof. They both had injuries sustained from fleeing from the incident, but they are both expected to recover.
8 children, all shot, most of them still in their beds. And the man who did it had just taken his daughter out for dinner the night before. This is Shreveport, Louisiana, April 19th, 2026. And by the time the sun came up that morning, it was already over. This is the Shamar Elkins case. And what really happened inside that Louisiana home is far more disturbing than the headlines told you. Before we go any further, if you are new here, subscribe right now. Because this channel covers true crime cases, real investigations, and the stories behind the stories that mainstream media moves past too fast. Drop a comment below and tell me, did you hear about this case when it first broke? Because a lot of people didn't, and that silence is part of the problem. Let's start at the end, because sometimes the only way to truly understand how something this horrific happened is to begin at the moment it stopped. 1 inch the morning. Shreveport police officers arrive at a house on West 79th Street. What they walk into, the Shreveport police chief would later describe as unlike anything most of his officers had ever seen. 8 children, shot, inside the same home where they had fallen asleep the night before, completely unaware. The youngest was 3 years old. Now here is the question that will follow this case for years. How does a father, a man who coached from the sidelines, who posted photos of his kids online, who just hours earlier had been sitting calmly on his front porch watching those same children play in the yard, how does he become the person who walks back through that door? That is what we are going to unpack today. All of it. The warning signs, the system failures, the private threats that were never documented, the illegal weapons that should never have been in his hands, and the one phone call made 2 weeks before the shooting that should have changed everything but didn't. Stay with me, because this story has layers, and every single layer matters. Shamar Elkins was 31 years old. He was not a stranger to Shreveport. He was not invisible. He had a job at UPS. He served in the Louisiana Army National Guard for 7 years. Between 2013 and 2020, he had 7 children across 2 households, 2 women, 2 families, and him at the center of both. His wife, Shaniqua Pugh, had been with him for 10 years. They married in April 2024. They had 4 children together. His girlfriend, Christina Snow, lived nearby. They had 3 more children together. On paper, and even on social media, he looked like a man who was present, who was involved, who cared. But here is the first detail that changes everything. Before Shamar and Shaniqua were even married, he had already told her exactly what he would do if she ever tried to leave him. He told her he would kill her, kill their children, and kill himself. She stayed. They got married anyway. And 2 years later, almost to the season, he made good on that threat. Now pause on that for a second. Because that statement made in private, never documented, never reported, is what investigators and domestic violence advocates are now calling a blueprint. Not a moment of anger. Not an empty threat made in the heat of a fight, a stated plan. And there was no protection order, no police report, nothing on record. This is the part of the true crime conversation that people don't want to sit with long enough, because the discomfort of it forces us to ask a question with no easy answer. What do we do about threats that live entirely in private? Now let's talk about the unraveling, because it didn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen quietly. The people closest to Shamar Elkins watched it happen in real time and were powerless to stop it. When Shaniqua filed for divorce citing infidelity, something shifted in him. His brother-in-law, Troy Brown, described it as watching a man lose his mind. Not rage, desperation, the kind that scared people more than anger would have. Troy tried everything. He reached out constantly, offered distraction, company, presence. And what he kept hearing back was one thing. Bro, I don't want to lose my wife. In January 2026, Shamar voluntarily checked himself into the VA hospital for mental health treatment. He stayed for about a week and a half, and when he came home, something had shifted again, this time in the right direction. He seemed lighter. He was back to spending time with his kids. The people around him exhaled. Maybe the worst of it had passed. It had not passed. Here is where this case takes a turn that should have been the final intervention. Easter Sunday, April 5th, 2026. 2 weeks before the shooting, Shamar called his mother Mahalia and his stepfather Marcus. And on that call, he told them he was drowning in dark thoughts. He said he wanted to end his life. He was crying. His stepfather spoke to him, urged him, told him he had the strength to come through it. And then Shamar said something that his stepfather could not shake afterward. He said, "Some people don't come back from their demons." That is not someone asking for help. That is someone telling you where they are already going. And yet, the morning of April 19th still came. Think about what was happening publicly during those same weeks. On social media, Shamar was posting prayers, sharing content about fatherhood, looking from the outside, like a man trying to hold himself together. And the night before the shooting, the very night before he took his oldest daughter out for a one-on-one dinner, just the two of them, he posted a photo of her eating a burger, a normal, warm father-daughter moment, the kind of post that would get likes and nothing else. At 9 p.m. that same night, Troy left for his night shift. He said Shamar was calm, sitting outside, nothing alarming, nothing that said the world was about to change. His neighbor, Freddie Montgomery, had walked past that same afternoon, saw Shamar on the porch. The kids were playing in the yard. They waved. That was the last normal moment anyone outside that family would see. 12 hours later, Freddie woke up to police filling that street. Now here is how the morning of April 19th actually unfolded. And this is important because it was not one crime scene. It was 4. Around 5 a.m., Shamar went to the home on Harrison Street where Shaniqua was staying. He shot her multiple times, including in the face. She survived, but barely. Then he left. He drove to Christina Snow's house on West 79th Street. That is where all 8 children were, ranging in age from 3 to 11 years old. Most of them were asleep. He walked in and he shot every single one of them. 7 were his own children. The 8th was their cousin. Police confirmed they were shot execution style. Most were shot in the head. One child tried to escape through a window and made it to the roof. That child was found dead on the roof. Christina Snow was shot in the head. Shaniqua's sister and a 12-year-old girl jumped from the roof trying to escape. The sister fractured bones. The girl walked away with scratches. A 13-year-old boy inside the home jumped from the roof without being shot. He broke bones in the fall. He was alive, and he called for help. He is the reason police arrived when they did. He is the reason we know what happened in that house that morning. By the time officers arrived at 6:01 a.m., Shamar was already gone. He carjacked a vehicle at gunpoint and led police on a high-speed chase out of Shreveport and into Bossier Parish. The chase ended on Brompton Lane. Gunfire was exchanged. Shamar Elkins was shot and killed. Whether it was a police bullet or his own that ended it, investigators were still working to confirm. In one morning, across 4 crime scenes, 10 people had been shot, 8 children were dead. Now let's talk about the gun, because this detail is one that the headline coverage largely moved past, and it should not be moved past. Shamar Elkins had a prior felony conviction for illegal use of a firearm from 2019. That conviction legally barred him from owning or possessing any firearm. And yet, when police confronted him, he had a rifle-style pistol. He had weapons inside that house, the same house where 8 children were sleeping. So the question that investigators are now trying to answer is not just who sold those guns, it's who knew, because a legally prohibited person still had weapons, and 8 children are dead because of that gap. This is a true crime case that hits multiple layers at once: domestic violence, illegal firearms, mental health crisis, system failure, and the private threats that never make it into any official record until it is too late. And then there is this. Shaniqua and her sister, both survivors of that morning, lost their own mother to gun violence when they were children, both of them, under the age of 10. They grew up inside that loss. And then decades later, Gun violence came back for the same family. Not a coincidence of geography, not random. The same cycle, closing in on the same people. The Caddo Parish District Attorney said it plainly in the aftermath. Domestic violence is not a private matter. It is a community issue, and it is almost always the children who pay the highest price. He is right, and this case proves it in the most devastating way possible. Here is what I keep returning to. The children trusted him. They were asleep. They were not hiding, not afraid, not braced for anything, because the person they should have been safest with in the entire world was the one who walked through that door. In the dinner the night before, that is the part that will not leave me. Was it guilt? Was it a goodbye? Was there a version of that evening where he made a different choice? Or had he already decided, and the burger and the photo and the one-on-one time with his daughter was his way of holding on to something before letting it all burn? We may never know what was going through his mind in those hours, but what we do know is this. The warning signs were there. The phone calls were made. The threats were spoken. The history existed. And still, 8 children did not make it to April 20th. If this case moved you, if those 8 children deserve more than a headline and a scroll, leave a comment. Tell me what part of this case you think needs more attention. The illegal firearms pipeline, the private threats that go undocumented, the mental health system gaps for veterans, the way domestic violence cases fall through before they ever reach law enforcement. Because every one of those threads leads somewhere, and this channel is going to keep pulling them. Subscribe, hit the bell, and don't go silent on cases like this one, because silence is exactly what allowed it to happen in the first place.